Hi, good evening, viewers. Today we are back together to discuss about the Portuguese era in Goa and its impact on Goa culture. Today, when you listen to the word Goa, what exactly is the what exactly is the image that comes to your mind? My son was saying in the millennials, we think of a place which is a beautiful, tourist spot, all beaches, sylvan sands, and the beautiful skies, green fields, and the coconut trees. A calm, peaceful place where you can enjoy yourself. Hardly anybody is aware of that 450 years of the Portuguese rule, nor are people aware of the trials, tribulations, or rather the oppression that people have gone through in Goa. So, today we are discussing what happened in Goa during those years. Why is it important to discuss that today? How does it have a bearing on our own culture today and our understanding about our past? And why is it important? So, nobody better than Savio to discuss that. As you all know, he is the editor of Goa Chronicles. He has been here in this very same channel earlier once, and you see him all the time in Republic TV. He writes elaborately on Goa Chronicle on all contemporary matters, political and other issues, and especially on Sanatana Dharma and its impact on the Indian culture. And of course, Vibhuti Jha is my co host every week. So, welcome, dear friends. Now, we will start the discussion. So,
Girija, just
Vibhuti Jha,
wanted to
yes.
say that your voice is echoing.
Yeah,
It
you
looks
also
like
feel
you
it?
have some
Yes,
speaker
then I
on.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I wonder how come. Okay, maybe I'll talk to phone.
Now it seems it's okay.
It's better? Okay. Yeah. It's okay now?
No,
Okay.
still your voice is coming.
Still it's there. Okay. I'll put off my phone then perhaps.
As the saying goes,
Usually I
damn
put.
technology.
Is it better now?
No,
Still I hear the.
I'm hearing your voice again.
Are the audience hearing any echo?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Anuradha, you are right. Yes. Shefali Vaidya is one of the people who has spoken on this Goan Inquisition. But the very idea of talking it in different forums is people need to become more aware of what is happening, what has happened in the past, and what is happening today. I felt that echo was there. And Savio, you don't seem to hear the echo, right?
No, I'm not hearing you.
Okay. Okay, I'll mute myself then when you're talking. So I think that should be better. Yes? Let me see what can be done. Okay. So,
All the sound, the kit sound, everything is coming on your end, Girija. When you muted yourself, everything went quiet.
everything went quiet.
So,
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
so let's have you take off on the issue, and while you fix the tech.
Sure.
So, so Savio, it is important here, if I may just say this, that the narrative. I have had the good fortune of living in Bangalore when it was an air-conditioned city. I worked in Reserve Bank of India for a while, and you know, I came to know many Fernandez, Disas, D'Souza's, Mendoza's, wonderful people, great people, no doubt. But there's something along the line that nobody wanted to talk about Goa Inquisition and what it did. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, at the onset of this discussion, Vibhuti and Girija, let me very categorically state that colonization as a process is something that the world has witnessed in different parts of the world. Unfortunately for India, and unfortunately for the people of Goa, we too were a victim of colonization and a very brutal colonization by way of an inquisition, which came about many years ago simply because the Catholic Church at that point of time believed that the believers of various different religions in Goa at that point of time needed to have been converted to the Catholic faith. And mind you, I'm saying Catholic faith and not the Christian faith, because the Neo Christian faith already existed in Goa, along with the Hindus, the Jews, and the other beliefs that existed in Goa. So let me get to a very important statement made by Voltaire. Voltaire wrote, Goa is sadly famous for its Inquisition, which is contrary to humanity as much as it is to commerce. The Portuguese monks deluded us into believing that the Indian populace was worshipping the devil, while it is they who served him. That is what Voltaire said. Now let me read to you another excerpt from a book written by Father James Broderick. He was a well-known biographer of Saint Francis Xavier, and he himself was a Jesuit priest. In his book on Saint Francis, Broderick wrote, Saint Francis Xavier's knowledge of Hinduism was, if possible, even less adequate than his biased notions of Mohammedanism. Though the Portuguese had been in India for 40 years, none of them appears to have made the slightest attempt to understand the vulnerable civilization, so much more ancient than their own, on which they had violently intruded. I'm not saying this. This is a biographer of St. Francis Xavier who's saying this. Now, you must understand this. When St. Francis Xavier in his letter, okay, that was he sent from Cochin on 20th January 1540 AD to the King of Portugal. This is what he writes. By another route, I have written to your Highness of the great need there is in India for preachers. The second necessity which obtain in India is those who live there are to be good Christians, is that your Highness should institute the Holy Inquisition. For there are so many who live according to the laws of Moses or the sect of Muhammad without the fear of God and shame before men. He wrote this in 1548. It took almost 8 years after that for the Inquisition to be instituted by the Vatican in Goa. You can correlate it to what his letter said, or you cannot. The fact of the matter is that the King of Portugal at that time did not pay heed to Francis Xavier's letter. It was the king that came afterwards that actually took on that letter. And by that time, Francis Xavier passed away and moved on. And he took on this letter and he probably acted on this letter, because what eventually followed up was definitely the Inquisition. Now you might want to not accept that past. But you see, the problem is, if you don't accept the past, you cannot correct the wrongs of the past. I'm not saying in any point of view that we should go back and blame everybody for what has happened. What has happened has happened. But you cannot live in denial that it has not happened. That kind of a Stockholm syndrome that some of us have in Goa cannot be accepted, because it is the truth. It did happen. Now, I'm not questioning your faith. Your faith is your personal beliefs in the divinity that you follow, or in the institution that you follow. But the fact is that this is a relevant part of our history. It has happened. It has been documented. It has been recorded. And if the Pope, in his wisdom, has apologized for inquisitions in other parts of the world, like Bolivia recently, then it is only fair that as people of India, where millions of us, thousands of us would have been a part of the Inquisition, right, should be apologized to, because no recorded number can quantify the damage done by the Inquisition to the people of Goa. And it is this truth that we have to accept and move forward, because for a reconciliation to happen, for a reconnect with your roots to happen, you have to accept the fact that this is a gory part of our history. It was something that connected us to the roots at that time, and we have to evolve and reconcile based on that. You cannot not reconcile after that, you know. But the failure to accept that truth itself is damaging. So when I look at it as a man of of Christian faith,
Before you go ahead,
sure,
I just want you to take us back to what happened during the Inquisition. When you say Goa Inquisition, many people do not know what exactly happened. I heard that Kashmiri Pandits were ousted from their homes. Many people had to leave their homes. What exactly was the choices given to them? How they were brutalized? How they were made to stop their regular practices?
well,
Probably some insight into those things that will give them an idea. Yes.
Girija, and Vibhuti, the brutality that emerged out of the Portuguese Inquisition in India was horrific. It was heart wrenching, and it was terrible, to say the least. There are so many gory details available in some of our history books, that the people that believed in a particular faith, who were considered to be pagans, heretics, people who followed the sacred divinity, the sacred feminine, were all put to task in the most horrific, brutal tortures available that were done to men and women. Many fled, as you rightly said, they fled from wherever they lived, moved to other parts of India. They allowed that. They, you see, what they, you must understand that when the Catholic Church went about spreading its mark in different parts of the world, they used the army, they used if you remember the Spanish Inquisition and Goa with the Portuguese Inquisition, what did they do? They come in, they target the indigenous faiths and the indigenous people, and they bring God to them. Their idea of God, the Catholic Church's idea of God, that Jesus is the way. Now, interestingly, in Goa, if you read uh, Saint Francis Xavier's letter itself, it clearly states people who already believed in the law of Moses and the Mohammedans. So he was looking at the existing people that were probably neo-Christians already, number one, who were not a part of the Catholic Church. They were Gnostic Christians that have traveled around the world, that believed in Jesus, but not in the idea of Christ and the Catholic Church. There were Jews already there who believed in the law of Moses. There were Islamists that were already there in India that believed in the laws of that were brought forth by Prophet Muhammad. So they realized that all this is in conflict to their conversions. Now, for all belief systems, Francis Xavier was a very spiritual man, a very devout man, and a zealot, to be honest. So to him, spreading the word of Christianity was his core responsibility. So they not only came to India, they went to Japan, they even tried China at some point of time, right? So he wanted to go ahead. Now in India, they were successful because they were able to beat down the people because of the strength of the army that they had, the strength of the economy that they had. So they took about almost 450 years of work.
What I heard is, I heard that people could not grow tulsi at home. Even by mistake, tulsi grew at their home, then they would be taken for inquisition.
Of
If
course,
they were not
that's
allowed
right.
to wear Indian costume like sari. So today, when I wore the sari, which I never wear, My husband was asking why. I said, if somebody tells me don't wear it, then I feel like wearing it. How can somebody tell that? That's what these people went through.
The problem is not that. The problem was uh, when the Inquisitions and all happened around the world, the Catholic Church were burning women as heretics. Now, the women, if you look at the world scenario of the Inquisition, there were many of them who were burned to because they were heretics, considered to be heretics. Now, they were considered to be heretics because they were followers of the sacred feminine. They were believers in the Devi, they were believers in the Shakti. Unfortunately, for a very long period of time, and even now, the Catholic Church is predominantly very patriarchal. Which is why when a bishop is accused of raping a nun, it is the bishop who gets sided with, and the nuns are the ones who get terrorized. It should be the opposite way. That a crime is a crime, whether it was committed by the man or a female. You stand by the truth. So the point is, on the Goa Inquisition, what we need to learn is very clear. We need to accept the truth that it happened. We need to understand that it was brutal. And we need the church to accept the fact that it has happened. Now let's move on, reconcile and move on. Because by you coming in and brutalizing the people of Goa, there is, of course, a complete shift in the cultural paradigms in Goa. It has worked well for the state of Goa. In a way, when it's worked well, it's because there are certain aspects where today our cultural roots, while in certain parts of Goa seem to be buried, they have actually kind of morphed into the Indian culture of doing things. Having something like the procession of Mother Mary is very similar to the procession that we have of the village god and goddesses. So you have these kind of cultural transmogrification that has happened with Christianity and the Sanatan Dharma principles. But I think we need to move on from here. We can't live in the past. Okay? We can't go on. Like, for example, a Hindu zealot cannot go up to a Christian and say, hey, listen, you're a Portuguese, you're from Portuguese ancestry, you need to do Gar Vapsi, and you need to change your name because you follow Christ and Christians. What difference does it make? Does anybody know what our ancestors went through in the past? What could have been the reasons for them to change? People are saying that you can take Portuguese citizenship and go. From 1961, every person who was born in Goa has the opportunity to take Portuguese citizenship irrespective of religion. If you were born before 1961, like my father was born before 1961 in Goa, his children have the right also to take citizenship because of him. Right? Now today people are saying, why are some people going to Portugal? Why are some Indians? And this is not only Christians, I think it's across the board. There are Muslims and Hindus from Goa who have taken Portuguese citizenship. On an average, almost 40 people surrender their Indian passports at the passport office in India, in Goa, in order to say that they are going ahead and taking Portuguese citizenship. Now that exodus of people is happening because there is a law that exists that gives the opportunity to the person in Goa to choose Portuguese if he wants to. Has the government worked on repealing that law? No. So we continue to be in a colonized mindset because there is a law that exists, number one. Number two, do we stop playing Lusophonia games? Do we stop playing Commonwealth games? No. In fact, we put Commonwealth Games stadiums around the country, which is supposedly then gets into a scam. But well, we pride in ourselves as being people who have been colonized. We pride ourselves in that. So my question to the people that ask me sometimes, that your name is Savio Rodrigues, you come from Goa, you of course have a Portuguese touch to your name. My father had the opportunity to take Portuguese citizenship. He hasn't. He hasn't because he has always considered himself to be an Indian. So has my mother. So has their parents. So have their parents. So just because we have a Christian name doesn't make us Portuguese. And we don't need to do any gar vapsi because we are in our own home. For one.
Totally get your point, Savio. You said it very correctly that past can't be changed, and we need to move forward, which is
Correct. And
very
the
key. And
and
moving
the only way
forward is the evil of the past, the conversion that the victor did over the oppressed or defeated. It still continues. And I have have discussions with my Christian and Muslim friends that conversion is actually, in my opinion, a sin against God's original intent. If God created the entire universe, He could have made me a Portuguese or a Japanese or anything in a matter of seconds, blink of an eye. But He did not. He made me Vibhuti. So when God created me in a particular way, and you impose the political or the armed forces way of vanquishing the defeated, you are actually insulting God's original intent. Is that a sin? And that's the kind of thing that we have to take forward, is discuss the issue of religious conversion, which is a political tool, not a God-given right.
I agree with you. In fact, Vibhuti, to be very honest, okay, I'm a very firm believer of the Sanatan Dharma principles. And I live my life based on Sanatan Dharma principles, and I'm always standing up for the country. Now, this belief in Sanatan Dharma principle didn't come from the Catholic Church, but it did come from reading certain texts within the Bible that were referred to Jesus as well. For example, the entire commandment of Jesus was based on two commandments: love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. How do you love God when you've never seen a God? Right? So you will only love God based on His manifestations, based on His creation. So,
Right.
which means my first manifestation of God are my parents. The second manifestation of God is my extended family, my wife, my kids, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, the environment around me, the universe around me. That's the manifestation of God, right? And how can I love my neighbor as myself if I don't love myself? I may be fat, I may be dark, I might be lame. I've been born special with a purpose, irrespective of how I am. Irrespective of where I am. Every human that's been born is born with a purpose, with a unique identity. That's why a DNA inside a person is very unique. And it's very rare that you get identical DNAs. Right? So that's your unique identity created by a supreme energy that we call God, or we call different names.
Right.
The fact of the matter is this: when somebody tells you that your God is not so important as my God, and my God is the only way for you to reach heaven or hell if you don't follow Him, right, or her, is absurd to the idea of God itself. Because if you limit God to an identity, if you limit God to an image, if you limit God to a thought or a dogma, you are actually, defiling the real energy of God, which is omnipresent, which cannot be bottled, it's beyond even reasoning. When you break an atom into finer atoms, you will get more atoms
More
within those atoms. And then you go further, you will get more atoms. So there's always a movement happening, there's always a churning happening. So today, it's like I told somebody of the Christian faith. He asked me, Savio, what you're doing is against our Christian beliefs, and why are you taking on the church and on various issues. So I gave him an example. I said, let's assume this is the situation, and there are two individuals. One's name is John. John is a regular Catholic church going person every Sunday, goes for confession also. But he's a womanizer, he's a wife beater, he's an alcoholic, he abuses his children, he doesn't save any money, he gambles away everything that he has done, and he's completely the worst man possible to have in society and in a family. But he goes every Sunday to church, comes out all smiling, gets blessed. Then you have another guy called Sham. Sham does not visit the temple at all. Maybe occasionally once in the year he might go to the temple. He does not abuse his wife. He treats his children with respect. He does not smoke. He does not sleep around with other women. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of character. Right? Who, when they die and go to heaven, will Jesus accept into heaven? So the guy looked at me strange and he says, why are you asking me such questions? I said, because that will define exactly what Jesus means and what you've understood by what he meant. Because the Bible itself said, not everybody who says Lord, Lord will enter the temple of God or heaven, but the one that does the will of the Father, right? The Father in reference to God. So what is the will of God? To judge? To judge his own creation. I mean, imagine this. I have two kids, right? Cadence and Kiana. And I'm their father. Do I even have a right to judge between them who I should care more for? Would that be fair to either of them? So why would God judge his own creation by saying you are the right person to go to heaven and you will go to hell? And who made that? So religion to me has always been a pathway that brings you to the door of spirituality. The problem is many people don't open the door of spirituality. They're still walking that pathway. I'm religious, I'm here, I'm on the religion pathway. They never open the door to spirituality. When they don't open the door to spirituality, they don't understand that the core essence of spirituality is humanity. It is to find God within you and around you. And that comes so beautifully in Sanatan Dharma. So when somebody
Savio,
tells, I need to do a Garvapsi, I find it humorous because, listen, I'm at home itself. And
Savio,
I've never been happier.
what you are
The
saying, Savio, is so remarkably true because you talked about your Christian friend about who is more Christian and who is less Christian. I had a similar conversation with a Muslim friend of mine, and he was telling me that you guys worship so many gods and all that stuff. You don't even go to the temple as often as we do. And I said precisely exactly what you said. I said, look, I do not go to the temple, say, for example. I pray once a day, once a week, or whenever. But you guy prays 5 times a day, straps a bomb, explodes it in the market, 20 die, 50 are injured. I'm driving by my truck. I take 5 people to hospital, their lives is saved. So from your definition, who is Khuda ka banda here? Me or your guy who killed? And he said, Dasab, you are Khuda ka banda. I said, that's where the issue rests. This is very critical that we have to advance the conversation in an intelligent dialogue. And just as you have understood, I won't say you have embraced Sanatana, you have understood that the path to spirituality, religion brings you over there. And if it brings you, you are happy with doing whatever you do, whatever you pray. That's what life is all about. The important part is that Sanatan Dharma, in the modern terminology, is an authentic practice that does not impose mandates, conditions. It's a truly democratic principle of life. And I'm talking to my Western friends here in the same way that humanism, God created the universe and he created life sustaining forces in it. So, what are the life sustaining forces? Let's take only three: water, sun, and air.
Air.
As a beautiful explanation for that, that why we say God lives in us. See, none of us have seen God, but God we see in a manifestation of sun, a form whose energy sustains us, otherwise we would be in ice age, dead virtually, gone. And sun has a form. So if I pay my respect and gratitude to God for giving us sun, anything wrong in it? And I'm talking to a hardcore Baptist guy. He says, no, makes sense. Then I said, look at the second example, water. It assumes the form of whatever vessel it goes into, a glass, a tumbler, or whatever.
Correct.
It's another manifestation of God. Our body is 70% water. We replenish and we feel re energized. Sun's energy, we measure a human output via energy, how he performs. God made his presence in our body straight away. And third and the final one, air, totally invisible, omnipresent, omniscient, without which no entity will ever live, even for a nanosecond. So, if just take these three elements of life, God is in us. It's our energy, our breathing, our water in us creates our performance yardsticks. So we worship whatever one is inspired by. Just as, to give an example, Buddha was inspired by sitting under the tree.
Yes.
Can we say tree is useless? The tree performs a fabulous function of emitting CO2 and oxygen both at different times of the day.
Correct.
That's why we respect nature the way it is. The guy said to me, and this is something which I love to share here with most of my friends, why the hell don't you tell us about it? It makes so much sense. I said, because we are stupid. We have forgotten the art of reaching out to people with a message,
True.
which is what it is. So I'm very delighted to see your affection, understanding of Sanatan. And I think coronavirus, in a very vicious way, taught us that it crossed religious boundaries, national boundaries, rich and poor boundaries, young and old boundaries. It taught us only one thing: you disrespect nature, and God will take over the whole thing. We are not
So true.
treating anybody unequally.
You see, that's the beauty about nature, about life. Okay, even if you look at water, if you look at the sun, you look at the earth, they don't judge. Water provides life in its own form to the good and the bad, and takes life in its wrath of both the good and the bad. So what it means is that it's your karma that you bring along with you, that you carry along with you, the deeds that you do, that really define the outcome of what's going to be your existence. So I have actually believed in just a simple thing for most part of my life when this understanding came about, is that if I follow my dharma and I live my karma, then I know I'm walking the right path. It's as simple as that. So when people say, are you against the Christian faith? Are you turning into a Hindu? I'm not doing any of that. I'm not turning against the Christian faith, neither am I turning into a Hindu. In terms of religion description, the religious package or tag anybody puts on you, I am a Hindu by geographical positioning because I am a citizen of Hindustan. By virtue of that, my roots will be Vedic, my roots will be Hindus. My faith, because it's come by faith, that's FATE, because I was born into a Christian family, happens to be a Christian faith. But interestingly, for me, I understood the Christian faith to be a little deeper than what you're taught or what you're made to believe. And the one thing that I learned is that I cannot judge anybody based on their religion, based on their caste, or based on whatever they believe in. If a man were to believe in a stone and it brought out the good in him, then so be it. Who am I to judge him? I will only value a person based on his actions, the good and bad of his deeds towards humanity, towards people, towards community. but not because of his faith. So today when I went to Haridwar, and I put the Trikund, tilak on my head, a, a, a pastor made a very very sad comment, which said that the Bible says that if you worship other gods, you and your generation and your children and all will be cursed. So I ignored that. And I primarily said, all I can do is pray for you, because you've not understood, number one, what that tilak stands for, and number two is the respect I'm having for that faith. I went to Haridwar, I went to the Ganges, because I believed in a cultural root that I had. It was a wonderful experience. Rishikesh was an eye-opening experience, because you're so attuned to nature in a very different spiritual way. I witnessed the Ganga Aarti, and I thought it was incredibly done. It was very beautiful. It was very very enriching. Now I do that because to me I see God everywhere. I've visited mosques. I've gone to mosques before. I've gone to Gurudwara. I visit these places because I try to understand. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to learn on what I believe, and I've always decided that I would play a role to unite people beyond religion. Right? That's how I see my role, and I want to take the principles of Sanatan Dharma beyond India to the rest of the world. That's how I see myself, because I see India as being the beacon. I see Sanatan Dharma being the beacon of peace in a world conflicted due to religion.
Right.
You are
So
absolutely
now,
right, Savio, because the conflict that religion brings about, I have argued, I have talked about, and I'm delighted that you belong to the same thought process that I belong to, is that this is the time now for Sanatan Dharma to capture the imagination of the world, because people are tired of religious bigotry that goes on. And to that end, I want to come back with another question, which is my favorite question again, is is how do we is the freedom of religion, which is enshrined in every constitution, is actually a Western inspired political tool. And I have
Correct.
recommended, I have written articles, and I have said in my TV programs that India must take the bold step of abolishing the concept of freedom of religion from the constitution, because as you said, Sanatan Dharma is accepting of everybody and everything.
Correct.
We are examples of diversity. Whether you pray to Kali, Durga, Guruvayur, whether you Krishna or anything, Shiva or anything, and they all live in the same temple. If I go to the temple and I pray, offer my prayers to Ganesh, Venkateshwar doesn't come charging to kill me. It doesn't matter what you pray, who you pray to, but it's an inspiration. So we already have the freedom of religion enshrined in our lifestyle. Why do we have to import and deliberately force on ourselves the concept of freedom of religion, which doesn't matter to us? Could that be a beginning point of a serious dialogue? Because religion needs a serious dialogue. It is almost, to put it mildly, it almost operates like an organized mafia, operates on
Of course it does.
fear and ignorance of people. But science has proven that 99 plus percentage, we are the same. You are
Well,
different.
Vibhuti, to throw a little bit of light in what you're saying, I personally believe organized religion, or religion per se, is the cause of most of the conflicts around the world, number
Yes,
one.
totally.
And number two is spirituality. The real understanding of spirituality is the balm to soothe the conflicts caused by religion around the world. Okay? Now, if you look at the issue of conversion when it comes to India, which is a very serious issue, um, forced or coerced conversions are something I'm completely against.
Yes.
Simply because it is based on a principle that your God, my God is better than your God, and your God is not the right God. Number one. And I don't understand which religious person in his religious mind who's understood the purpose or the meaning of spirituality will ever
Will it?
term one God different from another God, right? But I've
Yes.
also understood through various research that I've done on it that a lot of it is business, Vibhuti and Girija. For
Yes.
example, there are about 110 so-called New Age churches in India that plan to have planting of trees at an average of 3,000 per organization. So if you multiply that into 100, you're talking about almost
35 lakhs.
30 lakhs or 3 lakhs plus, you know, churches in India. They actually ask for money in UK and US as donations for church planting. The term I use for it is called church planting.
And
It's like sowing a seed. They come and plant a church. They plant a church taking donations from international organizations, saying they're doing good. So, what is the good that they are doing? They're doing it in the field of education, they're doing it in the field of healthcare, they're doing it in the field of job opportunities. So, they give these kids who are from poor societies in India an opportunity to take further education abroad, and then these kids are forever indebted. You see, for 70 years before this, the current government that's actually working towards taking education beyond religious institutions that control education for a considerable amount of time.
yes.
What is it that the person wants? Who are they targeting? We never answer those questions. They are not
Exactly.
targeting the rich and the elite. They're
Yes.
not targeting the ones who can indulge into an intelligent conversation or dialogue. They're targeting the downtrodden who only want to live
Absolutely.
with basic
Yes.
humanity, with basic education, with basic healthcare. Because we've not been able to fill that gap, that is why they open and venture into that gap by bringing God to them. So, to the poor man, let me give it to you in an example. If you were to go to a village and a man needs 10,000 rupees because he's in dire straits, and you offer him 10,000 rupees, by the Indian mentality of humility, of respect, you would become God to that man.
Exactly. And
So,
he
in
follows what
order,
you say.
correct, and in order for us to change that, we have to use the part of education, we have to use the part
Exactly.
of healthcare, where we go beyond religion appeasement and get into the true meaning of secularism, which is no appeasement due by religion. You know, people think
Yes.
secularism is the acceptance of all religion. No. The clinical definition of secularism is acceptance of no
No
religion
differentiation.
in matters of governance. It means
Yes.
to respect you as a citizen irrespective of your religion.
Yes. It doesn't
Right?
matter at all to the government what
So
is
when
your, it's a
people go
private
out
thing.
and say, let's stop conversion, let's stop conversions. Of course. But you can't be violent because when you be violent against them, you forget that they have an ecosystem
Yes.
that can make it a global issue. Because your governments in the past, our governments in the past, have never been able to curtail the international onslaught that comes due to targeting, say, a foreign missionary in India. But nobody looks at the fact that he's gone around converting people for whatever reason, good or bad, as
Yeah.
per the law. So you need stronger laws. You need implementation of the laws against conversions. But most of all, you need to bridge the gap in the areas where the conversions are happening. So if they are
Yes.
going to the tribal land, why are we not going to the tribal land and providing them the same thing?
Right. Absolutely.
What are they giving them? 100 rupees, 500 rupees, basic education, opportunities for job. These things should have existed before. I'm not blaming them for converting the people. Out of desperation, many people do desperate things. But
But
we
not
as
all conversions have taken place because of that, right? There is also conversion which take place forcibly, which is what we are talking about. Right.
Yes.
Force,
Why are
yeah.
they being
So one is
forced?
by inducement, the other is by force and fear. Both
What is the
these should
fear?
be
What
avoided.
is the
Yes.
fear? There are two proselytizing religions that are present in India right
Right.
now. One is Christianity, the other one is Islam, right?
Yes.
Christianity takes the fear route that there is only one way to get to heaven. Islam also takes the fear route that either you follow the words of the Prophet, you're not going to be in Jannat, right? Out of the two religions, both of them use their own tactics to convert. Therefore, it is important for the government to
Yes.
create stricter laws to stop conversions. It cannot happen with Hindus taking up arms and fighting those
Yes.
people who are converting, because that itself will raid. You know what do they
Create
want?
a lot of
They want
repercussions.
they want a situation to create communal disharmony in what is perceived to be a secular India by their definition, not the real definition of secular.
So it is a conspiracy to create
Of course,
that an image. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
a
Got it.
Pehelu Khan dies and there is an international outrage. The Palgar sadhus were brutally murdered by a mob in front of the police. Did you even see one article of international outrage? What was the fault of the Palgar sadhus? Can you tell me?
No one has talked about it till today. But you are seeing
And
the videos how they were murdered. It is
yes,
there
and it's
very
there
clear.
for everybody to see.
Yes.
Let's be honest. Prime Minister Modi himself did not comment on it. He has commented on the terrorist attacks internationally where people were stabbed, but he has not commented on the Palgar sadhus. For whatever reasons known to him, the fact of the matter is, when it is a minority, there is global outrage when it comes to religious minorities. When it is a Hindu, nobody in India or globally cares. And that
Right.
is clearly evident with the Palgar sadhus.
So there is every kind of effort to provoke the Hindus to fight against the Christians or the Muslims, so that then there can be an international outreach against India.
Correct.
And that
That's
is
what
a
it is.
very simple thing. If you see the thing, when I was a student in Gokhale Institute in Pune, I, I came across a Time magazine article many years ago, and that was Indira Gandhi used to talk about the role of the foreign hand in India. Those of you are old enough to remember that she used to blame the foreign hand in Indian affairs. Far Eastern Economic Review wrote an article in which they said that India will remain a happy hunting ground for everybody who has an axe to grind with India on any consideration. It is for India to rise up, to
Correct.
stand up against the atrocities that are committed. And that is because more than 150 countries have Christian theology and 50 plus are Muslims. We are the lone guy standing around there. And with 1.3 billion people, we are they are trying to harvest us either by chopping, churning, or just occupying. So they have made the rules. The rules of engagement are not designed by us. But in a cycle of life and death, thanks to science and technology advancing, we have the doors of his spirituality have opened up now. That's why churches are declining. Church attendance is declining in the West
Yes.
because of the simple reason that nobody blames nature for a tsunami or a 16-inch nor'easter which takes life. Nobody blames God for that, right? And
True.
all the religious mavericks and the magicians who say that pray to X God and Y God and miracle will happen, they are right now hiding in some den or some cave because no magic is helping against coronavirus right now, isn't it? This is the
True.
time for us to rise up because now I have begun to have conversation with Many people, and I became a better Hindu after coming to America. I became a better human. I became a better internationalist after coming to America because I realized there was so much good in our way of life. The people are asking, why don't you talk about it? But the important point is that they fear, like Savio had alluded to that, the path to spirituality may be via religion, but that's the true way to live. In nature, there is no discrimination. Nature doesn't discriminate. Sun's light doesn't discriminate between you and I. Other than the geographical plateau you live, the sun's rays determine whether all of us are naturally tanned, or the Western people go to a tanning machine to get tanned to look like us. So
True.
the point is very important here is that we have to become aware and alert and act on that. And the
Correct.
organized religion is fearing that the advances in science and technology is exposing the fear element and the ignorance element. Just as once upon a time, people believed that women were responsible for giving birth to a male child, and a cultural thing that happened, every mother would say, Mera bacha, mera beta. Now we know it's the stupid men who is responsible for gender determination of a child. So do we need to marry more than one?
Hmm.
No reason at all. That is gone. Likewise, we all know that everybody's teeth is white. I sometimes joke with my black friends, actually. I tell them, why do you guys talking about white supremacists? God himself was a white supremacist. Otherwise, why did he make snow white and every living item on the planet Earth has white teeth? And he was also a redneck because he made everybody's blood red. So think about it in that fashion. And I must share this example, which you will like, Savio, is that I told some of the black friends of mine that you know something, it is Hinduism alone, Sanatan Dharma alone, that embraces color black. They said, what do you mean? I said, we have a goddess designated as Kali and she's black all over from head to toe. For a specific purpose, she was created. And our biggest, one of our most favorite, entities is Krishna, and his alternate name is Shyam. Shyam means dark skin. So think about it. I didn't know that. I said, yes, exactly. So instead of converting to Islam, embrace Sanatan practices. Savio, all for you now.
I think Girija is trying to ask me a question, but I can't hear her.
She has muted herself.
Yes. So, Savio, to sum up what you said, to stop conversion, there are three ways. One is improve awareness about Sanatan Dharma and education.
Yes.
Second is fill the gaps that exist, whether in healthcare or education or poverty, so that people do not get converted for those reasons,
Yes.
right? And the third is create stricter laws,
Yes.
right?
That's correct.
These are the three things that we have discussed today. And also, I want you to discuss about why is it important that we ask that the Portuguese, or rather the church, should accept that they perpetrated these cruelties on the Goa soil, and they will not do it again, which they have done in other nations. And how can we go about it? And
Well,
why is it important to do it?
because the Catholic Church itself has set an example of apologizing for the Inquisitions in other parts of the world, Bolivia being the recent. I think if they can do it with other countries, I'm certain that they can do it with India too. If you accepted your mistakes in the other parts of the world, then I think India is an exception. You can accept your mistakes in India as well. For one, number one.
But unless we
Number
ask, they
two,
are not going to give it. So who is going to ask?
no, that's what I'm coming to. That's the second part.
Yes.
The first question to answer was why. So they've already set a precedent of taking that step. Now that they have taken that set a precedent, it's time for us as Indians, and that has got nothing to do only with religion. I think it's got to do with all Indians, whether they're Christians or Muslims or Goans, who could might even be Jews for that matter. It's for them to come together and demand a petition that goes to the Prime Minister of this country to bring the facts of what has happened in the past to the fore and to demand that the Indian government speak with the Vatican representatives in India so that that message can be conveyed to the Vatican Secretariat in Vatican that the people of India, in particular the Christians in India, along with the rest of the community in India, demands an apology for the Goa Inquisition that happens. That's how I see the route would work. But the challenge is whether the government will want to be party to such a step. Because, like I said, if we didn't care about something as recent as the Kashmiri Pandits' exodus, I don't think anybody's going to care about anything that happened 450 years of torture and brutality in any Indian government. Right? Because the Kashmiri Pandits only now are getting some recognition. But at that time, which was in 1990, we were not a backward country. We were a pretty advanced country in our own rights. But everybody watched that brutality happening without uttering a single word. So I think in that context, it is important to understand that the government must step in, but conscientious citizens must come out and demand an apology from the Vatican.
Wonderful.
And
Because we need,
you
there
brought
is
in the
Varun here.
Kashmir issue, and that is very, very important. You know why? Because we Hindus ourselves are not aggressive or even demanding of the rightful action. So for example, when we observed the 50 years of Kashmir insurgency and evacuation and people running away from there, we were part of that. There was a tremendous sense of pride that not a single Kashmiri Pandit became a violent jihadi to cause attacks and bombing of Kashmir area. This is a matter of pride, no doubt about that. But when I shared this with my American friends, they had a dual reaction. They said, "That's truly awesome that you guys are such peaceful guys that none of you turn violent." But the counter question was very relevant. You mean to say nobody fought back? They were torturing you, they were killing you, they were annihilating you, and nobody fought back. Forget about the Kashmiri 500,000 people who ran away in January 1990 or whenever. But 80% of the country is Hindu. You mean to say there was no reaction anywhere? Do you guys don't know how to fight? I mean, they are trying to annihilate you and didn't fight? What kind of folks are you, man? And that's the issue which is important. Violence is not the way, but assertion of your scenario is key. And you are absolutely right, Savio, that if we are not declaring this Kashmir element as genocide with our own country, why are we asking the United States to declare that? If we are not declaring Pakistan as a terrorist nation, why are we asking America to declare Pakistan as a terrorist nation?
Precisely.
Action, responsibility, and accountability is with us. And I have many interactions with my American friends, and they say, "Guys, do what you like. Do you think we have time to interfere in other countries' affairs? Go ahead and do it. If you did not attack Pakistan when they attacked your parliament, and you listen to my advice, I obviously don't want war. But your parliament was attacked. I did not come to seek India's opinion whether I should have attack Afghanistan or not. We attacked,
Well,
we're living with the consequences of that, be that as it may. So be prepared for the consequences and take the action. We have forgotten that beautiful lesson that it's you who are responsible for your own state of affairs. We can't blame anybody. And I don't blame anybody. I totally despise when we Hindus and we Indians crib and cry, "Oh, thousands of years ago we have been slaves and we have been..." I ask a counter question, Savio. Why did you let it happen? Where was our knowledge, wisdom, intelligence? We were the golden bird of the international trade. 26% of the global trade without English. And Shashi Tharoor talks about India being lucky to get English as an education from the British?
No, no, no,
Come
no. He
on.
doesn't say that. He doesn't say that.
He said that. He said that we have
No.
English.
In his book,
He
in
said
his
he
book,
said it. He's very proud Hindu. I have nothing against him. But I'm saying that he said somewhere. Or a lot of people say, oh, the British gave us English, so we are in IT field the way we are. Come on, get over that hump. The British or the Islamic invaders did not come to India as part of the tourism department's incredible India sightseeing. They came to loot and take the advantage of the riches because we were simple guys. We transcended in our mindset and we forgot that the barbarian at the gate will never be satisfied if you offer him lassi and a gulab jamun when he's trying to cut your throat.
just one this thing. Shashi Tharoor, in his book Era of Darkness, talks about how the British brought misery to India. He talks about how the people in Calicut, their fingers were cut because they were. He talks about how we had 27% of the GDP before the British came in and how they looted. These are
Girija,
numbers.
I know about the book. What I'm
Yes,
saying is that he has
yes,
said, and I've read that we should be grateful for English language, and he said that for railway network and everything else. So I know Sashi Tharoor's books. I have heard this. So at this point, he's not the issue to talk about. But
right.
important thing is that I'm trying to deliver a point that we were prosperous without English. That's,
Yes, absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
what is
Yes,
important.
yes,
Now,
yes.
I'd like to share just one view.
Example. Yeah. Welcome, Varun. Before we proceed further, the Varun's
Hi,
channel
Varun.
is where we are.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
Varun
Varun.
is the person who has, wanted
Hey,
us to
yeah,
discuss all
I
these
don't want to.
topics.
Yeah, I don't want to break the thought process. Hello, Savio, huge
Hi,
fan,
Varun.
and I'm so glad I'm watching you for the second time on this platform as well. But finish your thought process. I just have a very kind of minor comment which I'll do. I'll make at the end.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
You see,
Thank you.
the inherent quality of most of us Indians is that for the last 800 years we've become so submissive and
Absolutely.
so subjugated to what is really our inherent strength, our inherent way of looking at life, which is also a part of a little bit of aggression, because that's what you would see in the Bhagavad Gita's teachings, where you have to stand up to fight to protect what is intrinsically your culture,
Yes,
your beliefs, your land, your people, right?
absolutely. Yes,
Unfortunately, because of this submission mentality that we have, you see it on the road. If there's a white man walking on the road, irrespective of which part of Europe or America that he comes from, you would have us running out to him, the bakshis de do, ye le lo, all those kind of things. I've
exactly.
seen that happen in Goa. So there was this incident where there were these beggar children going after this foreign man, and his two other people were also there. So they were very irritating, and they, like they normally are, quite irritating when they want to beg. So in his little bit of an irritation, he managed to push the girl, and that little girl fell down. So I went to the little girl and I picked her up and I looked at her and I said, बेटी आप क्या कर रही हो? भिखारी से पैसा क्यों मांग रहे हो आप? He looked at me. So what do you say? I said, I don't feel bad. I'm just stating a fact. She's a young girl.
Yeah,
You were inhuman to push her. I'm just telling her not to waste time asking money from beggars like you. And so don't need to react, because then you would get so much pasting over here that you would regret it. So I suggest you walk away. Right? So that's the
exactly.
point. The point is India has
Absolutely.
always been very, very powerful, but we've lost that inherent belief in ourselves. That is why we go out. Look, I'll give you a classic example in startups. We're so happy when a foreign company comes and invests so much of money in startups in India. Amazon is setting up an office plant in India. But we never think, अरे यार हम Amazon क्यों नहीं बना सकते यहाँ पे? हम एक Amazon क्यों नहीं कर सकते जो बाहर लेकर जा सकते हैं? हम एक Twitter क्यों नहीं बना सकते? Or even our numbers, our mathematics, which were done by our learned men, are now being branded in America, like the zero and all that. And we say, oh wow, this is foreign, this is for us, this is American.
Zero or yoga or basmati or
Everything.
anything. Yes. Vibhutiji
हम
has always been saying we should have a Twitter here, and now who has come? He has
हमारा
been
No, I
saying
mean,
for such
आत्मसम्मान
a
ना,
I've
long
said
time.
this on Jaipur Dialogues any number of
Yes.
times that it's time
So
for Indians
such a long
to
time.
have
Yes.
their own Facebook, own stuff, and own based on our own cultural
the
requirements.
problem is
Yeah,
our आत्मसम्मान
yes, gone.
is lost somewhere.
Yes,
ये अपना आत्मसम्मान जो है ना, वो कहीं घूम गया है.
gum gaya hai.
अरे
We have
एक
to
फॉर एक
rediscover our strengths, and that is why
एक
we have
फॉरेनर के साथ
are
में
here.
जाकर अपना पिक्चर ले लो. एक फॉरेनर डांसर आकर हिंदी मूवी में आती है, विल स्मिथ आकर नाचता है या कोई आकर नाचता है तो बड़ा हंगामा होता है यार. ये छोड़ो.
Right.
India is
Absolutely.
far more beautiful, far more intelligent, far more successful, far more talented
Yes, right.
Absolutely. Very true.
than any of the foreign available people that we idolize.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we don't, but that will change. At least I hope I contribute to that in some.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
changing.
So that is we
I
can
will
see
say
that.
this for very
Yes.
sure that I'm very confident that the youth of India, that is something which I have reached out to Prime Minister Modi, saying this on the TV programs, that his for the next 3 years, 2024 until we arrive there, all that he needs to focus on is to make sure that the demographic dividend is reaped fully in India. The youth of India must be fully utilized. And the demographic dividend doesn't turn into demographic burden.
Correct.
But that's the biggest challenge Prime Minister has going forward. Politically, he has accomplished a lot, which Sheikh Farooq Abdullah and others would have thought, Owaisi would have said, he can't change Kashmir in 100 years. He did it. The man is a karma yogi. He can do it. Now the focus has to be entirely economy. And once we have economic strength, political clout will follow. Because learn the lesson from China, it just took advantage of the West. And here, because that was one of my primary assignments to develop Indo-US businesses, I remember the day US deficit with China was $42 billion. There was a consternation in American circles. So they were asking me, just take 10% of that to India. But you remember the government of our times, or
Correct.
those times, they were so corrupt and evil. They told me that ये लोग जाएंगे कहाँ? इनको तो इंडिया आना ही पड़ेगा.
Correct.
And पैसे खाएंगे, पैसे कमाएंगे. That was the evil of the Congress Party. I began to dislike because I saw the whole operation from close quarters. I mean, that's a conversation for another day. But Savio, so great to hear you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I would love to kind of chime in a little bit, even though I'm the most ignorant out of this elite panel that I have, the esteemed people here. But one comment, what I just heard even Savio make was, the youth. If you look at all the companies here in US, most of them in the Silicon Valley or in the IT domain are being led by Indians. I mean, questioning the technical knowledge or overall the business acumen of an Indian can never be done. We have people who have proved it time and again. So building up another Amazon of India, like Flipkart's been other companies who try to make it. But you're right. There are people who feel pride in having investment from these foreign companies and venture capitalists, and they feel that now they've done something big. But it should have been the other way around, wherein we, being in India, should have been funding these American multinationals. That would definitely be a differentiator. The second point that initially I thought I heard you. I hear a lot of echo today. I don't know why,
Yes.
but
Even I'm there.
one of the points you made earlier as well, Savio, was regarding this conversion and how this conversion is being should be regulated, or there should be stricter rules, guidelines, and if somebody is doing it, how they should be tackled more from a process perspective rather than being tackled by these lynches and all that stuff that happens. So I think That is absolutely very, very valid of you to say that. And I would love to see that happen, in the near future, because off late, what we've seen in the last couple of years has been like horrendous. I mean, whatever has happened and whatever continues to happen in our country, I think it's really, a shameful thing. And it leaves a very bad impression of the country, in front of others or
Absolutely.
outsiders as well. So I did take the liberty to invite Shruti as well, and she wanted to say hi and maybe also talk. So welcome, Shruti.
Yes.
Hi Varun, hi all.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
You
Shruti.
know, Savio, I've been following since quite a while. I've been reading, and I was so happy to have stumbled upon someone like him who's saying the precise things that I want the youth to know. And yeah, so he saved a lot of work that I intended to do. I don't have to do it now. And just today, I wanted Savio to do a talk exactly on this. So, like he told me just yesterday that it's all preordained. So, I guess this is preordained. Uh, Savio, I will ask you some irrelevant and very candid questions that are more
Sure.
relevant to the youth, uh, that are not so heavy like your discussion has been. Because so I feel the exact same thing. I come from, my ancestors come from Pakistan. I'm a Hindu. We had a major Hindu exodus years ago when most of the migrants, Punjabi migrants, half of Punjab went to Pakistan. So all the Hindus in that part of Punjab had to migrate, and my grandparents were one of those people. And when I was growing up, I was of a very secular opinion, and I believed in. I had my own belief, which were far more spiritual in nature. So my parents would always tell me about religion and how you're a Hindu and these things, and I would say, no, I'm everything. So then when I grew up, uh, I sat down with my dad one day, and he told me, okay, let's do this. Let's, based on your opinions, decide your religion, and then if you wish to, you can convert and choose any. So, so I said, wow, that sounds interesting. So I sat down with him and I told him, I believe in this. I want the freedom to worship Jesus, and I want the freedom to go to a mosque, and I want the freedom to worship a tree. And I believe that there is divinity in all of these. And I do believe in ahimsa. So one by one, and he said that's exactly what Sanatana Dharma says. And in fact, it's the only religion that says that. So the essence of all religions is Sanatana Dharma, which you happen to be. So you need to be really grateful and proud that you don't have to do this process of converting and limiting your beliefs, the kind of belief system you come from, which is you're more spiritual in nature. And spirituality has a name. It's called Sanatana Dharma. And as I grew, much older, I found my guru, and I saw how many people across countries, cultures, religion, they were all coming and seeking the exact same wisdom. With even though we do have satsangs, we do have artis and pujas, and I saw foreigners participate in it. People from even Arab countries participate in those because they understood the essence. So our gurus in India have done a very good job of making people like Swami Vivekananda and many other gurus are. This has been the land of sages, be it even the Sikh gurus to Mahavira to Lord Buddha. We've been a land of wisdom, and all of these gurus, even if they happen to form other religions like Jainism or Sikhism, their foundation teachings do come from this spirituality or whatever you want to call it, called Sanatana Dharma, which is the essence of all. So I'm so glad, Savio, that you and I always questioned, what if I happen to be a Christian? Would I then be able to convert and become a Sanatana Dharmi? Watching you has made me realize that yes, maybe I would have still been able to do that because you have been able to do that. Other than that, um, yeah, I forgot what I had to say. Yeah, I had a very stupid question to ask, which is very relevant also because all of these things we understand, but when it comes to practice, there's another way of conversion that's going on, which is not converting the downtrodden and poor, which is, I have at least 5 or 6 friends who have converted to Islam or Christianity because they've fallen in love with Muslims or Christians. So now, the thing that you said that really struck me about a man who goes to church but is, not a good person. And then there is a man who doesn't do any of the religious things but is a Hindu and is a good man. What happened with my friends was actually quite the reverse. So they somehow got swayed by the Muslims and the Christians who were pretending to, be extremely loving and will allow them, and they have their way. They are, they're very charming, and then they brainwash and they give so much of support that girls do get converted because they perceive a Muslim or a Christian man somehow be far more accepting of them than a Hindu who would probably not be accepting or bring up at the time of marriage, would bring up things like, I need to ask my family, or you're from a different caste. So I was not able to say my friends. I counseled them all, but I saw one after the other, them all get married to these men, and they're not happy today. Some even divorced. But how can we counter this? Is my question.
Savio, you're mute.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear it.
It's actually a very good question, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
They say love is blind, and sometimes love is so blind that it's religiously blind, not only color blind. It's religiously blind because that's what love is. You
yeah,
know, uh, I think a lot of it has to do with how you are in a particular family setup, and how is the kind of upbringing that you have. I'm not going to tell my kids that they cannot choose on the basis of religion if they have managed to fall in love. I'm not going to tell them to
right.
do that. But I'm also going to make them aware of what are the complexities of intercaste marriages, especially with certain religious communities that are extremist in their views and in their beliefs and in their adherence to those beliefs in day-to-day life, right? So in the end, it is of course going to be their choice, and I believe my kids will make wise choices because they will be blessed by Ma Saraswati as well to make wise choices, right? And every parent is going to be worried, but we must address it. We must address it, but it cannot be addressed in a manner uh, that is aggressive enough to question the very act of love. That is when the repercussions happen much more, and that is where the rebellion happens much more, in my opinion. Okay, so let's say you were to tell a young girl, maybe she's a Hindu girl in love with a Muslim boy, and you were to be aggressive with her in her approach for that love. Being that age, being at that point of time, there's going to be a rebellion that will happen. So you're not appealing to their intellect because they are not reacting by intellect. They are reacting by the hormonal mental stimulation that's driving them towards that affair, right? It's like when a couple of years ago, uh, a very senior guy from a Hindu organization was wanting to come into Goa and try and speak against Valentine's Day and be a little aggressive as he was in Bangalore. I told a friend of his that the problem with you people is that you think aggression is going to get the youth to look the other way. The youth doesn't look that way. You can only inspire the youth. You cannot perspire the youth.
Yeah,
By aggression, you perspire the youth. You don't inspire them. I know youth in India, irrespective of religion, is looking at being inspired, and youths all over the world. So today, when your youth icons are Bollywood, which has absolutely no,
yeah,
no value system,
yeah,
then you're going to expect people to make the similar kind of decisions, right?
Correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So
Yes.
I think it's important for us as a country, okay, to change our icons to people who are more contributing towards nation building, irrespective of religion, that the youth of India follow. Because you see, principally, people who are sound and comfortable with their religion will marry into the same religion. People who go beyond religion, I'm not saying intercaste marriages are wrong. I'm nobody to judge that.
Interreligious.
Yeah, interreligious marriages,
Religious
intercaste
marriages.
marriages also. You know, I
Yeah.
don't know whether that's right or wrong. I'm not to judge anybody for that. But what I do know that at the end of the day, when there is a conflict based on religious principles, that conflict will find a way to affect the family at some point of time when there is strict adherence to particular principles that they follow or practices or dogma. So it's better then to be within the same community rather than go elsewhere. If you can fight it out and go beyond religion, I wish those couples the very best. You know? Because eventually love and humanity is what rules the world. But if you are slightly a religious person and you fall in any of the brackets, then it's not fair for the other person to get them to adhere to your principles. And if you don't adhere
Of
to their
course.
principles,
Yes.
Yeah. Then it's a
That is true.
conflict.
Absolutely.
right?
I want to ask you one more question. Uh, I'm very curious. I prayed for you, and then you happened to meet the source of my prayers, my Guru himself. A few days later, I saw you with Guru Dev, and you were on live, and you had to go somewhere. I was supposed to come and ask you a question, and Varun said, no, he has to go for a meeting. He just randomly left. And I said, I know where he left. He went for a walk with my Guru Dev. I'm very curious what conversation you had with him. So if you could share something about that.
Sure.
Sri Ravi Raviji.
Well,
Sri Ravi.
I think it was well. Firstly, I was grateful and I was humbled that Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar decided to speak to me. I met him in the first day itself for about a couple of minutes, for about 15-20
Right.
minutes. But the second stage before I was to leave the following day, I met him again. And we started to discuss a lot of issues that are plaguing India, from love jihad to business to need for in Atmanirbhar Bharat products in India, various other things we were talking about. And I was humbled because I was told much later after that walk that he doesn't spend much time with people so long, but he took
Yeah.
this considerable walk with you for almost 20-25 minutes. So there was something more in that understanding. So what I was having a conversation with somebody who's far more religiously and spiritually, not even religiously, spiritually much more advanced than I was, and I was having a conversation as I would with any normal person, but with a different perspective altogether because it was taking a very spiritual turn. So he asked about my family, my kids, asked me to bring
Oh,
them
wow.
to the ashram, and it was actually it was a very nice conversation because I felt very humbled because um,
Right.
it takes a lot of it takes a lot of humility for somebody of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's stature to talk to somebody who's not very consequential as I am, but he took that time out. So it made me feel very humble. And I think I was very impressed by the work around. I'm still very impressed by what he does. I think the organization, that effort is something that comes from the heart. I'm a little disappointed with him today on the Dr.
Yeah.
Tedros being a part of the WFEB conference,
Yeah.
primarily because I don't think like Gurudev and I don't claim to think like
Mm.
him. There might be an higher purpose. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
not seeing it. I'm a guy who sees the truth for what it is.
Yeah.
And when I see the truth, I hold Dr. Tedros to blame for his dereliction in duty as far as the COVID
Yeah.
pandemic is concerned. And I think if at any point of time in January last year, if he would have taken a more aggressive and a stern stand towards China, then maybe we would not see 2.8 million people dead and so many other lives destroyed by the COVID. So, in that context alone, without being judgmental, because I'm nobody to hate Dr. Tedros or Xi Jinping or any of them, but I'm a man who follows the truth. And for me, when truth to me is based on facts and not emotions, right? So, the truth to me is if there is any reconciliation that needs to be done with Dr. Tedros, it has to be with him telling us the truth.
Yes.
Because there have been so many contradictions that he has himself has made in communications that he's brought out. And that person cannot then share a stage, in my opinion, with Gurudev, Sri Ravi Shankar, and talk about regaining trust. You cannot regain trust when you've not been truthful. And the world needs the truth. I'm not saying that we all know where the virus has come from. You can continue to deny that. But the fact of the matter is somebody's got to answer for 2.8 million people who are dead.
Absolutely.
Nobody bothers about that. Nobody cares. I mean, I'm amazed that the world is not even asked for accountability. This number of deaths is worse than any war that this world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Every nation should ask this question.
At least some accountability.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you
And this
had a
is
virus that destroyed what is essential. America was probably one of the most robust health system. Vibhuti would have to agree
Yeah.
with me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The coronavirus completely came and made an ass out of the healthcare system in the US because
Right.
they witnessed as much or more suffering as we have as India.
No. The United States has lost 500,000 people plus in a peacetime
Yeah.
scenario. It's so disgusting. And the important part here is there is a call here. There is a definite call here to find out how did it happen, who did it,
It should.
and it's happening. But believe it or not, mainstream media is not talking about it.
Nobody
That's the
is.
sad part. There is some conspiracy here. The issue is nobody is talking about it except a few people, but it is getting aggressive. It is getting aggressive because a lot of
And
people have lost lives, and the political scenario here in the US is so bizarre that Biden is encouraging, and I want to say this, encouraging immigration in a very difficult time. He's putting children in schools to have live education where our own children are not able to go for that. So there is a lot of distortion happening in America at this point in time, like it or don't like it. But the call for investigation has become very strong, and people are saying that the WHO report cannot be allowed to be manipulated. But for me, it is like Mission Impossible 2. Valor of form, you have seen the virus. It's happening here. It is vile, it is ugly, it is dirty, but Mission Impossible 2 has repeated here in real life.
and that is why Vibhuti and Shruti, the conflict I'm having with Sri Ravi Shankar's decision to share the platform with Dr. Tedros stems from the fact that this man had the potential, by being in that position of
And
power,
the knowledge.
to prevent at the
Yes.
onset from
Absolutely.
Yes.
January right up till March.
Right.
There could have been better mechanisms put in place to prevent. The first and the glaring error he made was to turn against the countries that were banning travel from China. And that was the most right thing to do because it would have been contained to China itself, and that is what his recent report is saying. The WHO investigation recent report is only saying that the outbreak has come from Wuhan city, which means everything we were saying right up from March. If you track Goa Chronicle, we've
Right.
probably done the most extensive writing on this man. Right from the time he was swindled by a girl, from Australia, claiming to have won a lot of money, and he
Right.
did a huge press conference. So he's a politician. He's not a health man.
Yeah.
And while I have the immense respect for Gurudev, and I know he doesn't think like me and he thinks differently, I would be untruthful to my own views if I were not to share it.
No,
because
Savio, I don't think he disagrees with you. In fact, I have a very similar problem with him, like you do, about this man. I have a problem that he shared the screen with some of these so-called Bollywood stars, and but he doesn't think differently. He does think like us, but what he's trying to do is reach a larger audience, perhaps, and set them right on the given an opportunity, because they can, there's no other way to tackle them but to have a conversation. He has resolved conflicts and even civil wars of countries only through dialogue. So he believes in all the conflicts can be dissolved through a healthy dialogue, and maybe that was his point of interaction
no, I agree.
with these
I agree.
highly corrupted politicians and Bollywood mafia connected people, and the man you mentioned. It's something that really bothers me also. But then, when I thought about it, he has always said one thing, that why I also had this intention when I started to speak, to write about the same issues that you discussed today, was because Gurudev always encourages and says that we need extremely courageous, determined, honest people who speak brutal truth as it is. And that is why he inaugurated Arnab's office also. And then I found you, and I was hoping that you meet Gurudev, because you were a discovery for me. You were literally following every word that Gurudev encourages us to say. He literally in every satsang says that the youth needs to speak about these issues, and he agrees with us. But it's just that his way of dealing with those people is slightly different than how we address these
I
issues. He was
agree,
not
and
very,
I'm pretty sure in all his wisdom and spiritual wisdom, I'm not going to question that at all.
yeah. And
My
and
only
he
my only
he
thing
is
is
of the same opinion as you, precisely of the same opinion as you. And because I was wondering how Gurudev, in every satsang I have heard countless times, say that Bollywood is completely taken over by mafia and underworld, ISI, Dawood rules, that I always heard him say. And then later I see his heart-to-heart conversations with some of these Bollywood celebrities, and I thought of the same thing. But he must just think slightly differently. They are
I'm
just
sure.
using
without
these
without
corrupted
going.
people as a tool to reach an audience and maybe even transform them.
Actually, I will not go into the speculation of someone's intent. I do not
Yes.
know that, so I won't venture into that. But
Right.
all the gurus are Ravi Shankar and Raviji and everybody, great, great people. No, no, I'm not suspecting that. But here is the truth. A doctor friend of mine in Long Island, in the first week of March last year, his laptop fell down and all the stores were closed. So in Upper Brookville area in Long Island here, he went to a particular shopping mall where a Chinese store was open, computer repair shop. He went into the store and they said it will take an hour to repair this screen. So just hang on here. He sat there. He saw the store was packed with UPS March 1st week, 2020. The store was packed with UPS FedEx boxes. So he asked them, what are you doing with these many boxes here? They said, oh, we are keeping it because we are going to start shipment of all the toilet paper, sanitary napkins, and gloves and things like that. He said, what for? Because we are going to have a lot of restrictions on usage and restrictions on movement around. So where are you getting it from? Oh, it's coming from China. So think about it. March first week of 2020, when the coronavirus has just broken in January, this Chinese guy in Long Island, Upper Brookville area, was buying stuff. He was a distributor for a wholesaler in Bronx or Brooklyn who had bought more than $100 million worth of toilet papers, which took 6 weeks to ship from China to US. Think about it. Somebody knew something that the Aam Janata did not. Somebody knew something. Who buys $100 million worth of toilet papers? in advance of anticipation of something. That's what triggers the investigation. That's why I don't trust
Exactly.
WHO. It is manipulated. If you guys have heard the podcast of Heritage Foundation, how China has infiltrated the Hollywood industry in US. I
Yep.
will send you that podcast, Savio and Varun and all of you. Read that report, that podcast. They said that Richard Gere was in one of the Oscar ceremonies. He talked about that while billion people are watching this show, I hope the Chinese are also watching and they will take care of the interests of the Buddhists of Tibet and
Tibet.
Dalai Lama. Since then, it's on record. Nobody knows about it, but it came out in that conversation. Richard Gere has not got any job. Chinese stopped it because China is a billion people market. Hollywood script writers go to China to ensure that the script is per their satisfaction.
Yes.
It
I
says the
agree.
Chinese people are sitting in the studio making sure that nothing is said. The Chinese have a rule: no mention of Taiwan, no Tiananmen Square, and no Tibet.
Yeah.
Absolutely clear. It talks about Doctor Strange movie in which the actual actor is from Tibet. Chinese changed it to some eastern country elsewhere. That is the kind of infiltration China does and has done. And the only country China fears is United States and India,
Yep.
because we are freaky people. That's why they can't come to terms with us. We are the only country that matches China in size, in number of people, and the fact that we have democracy as yet. And we have a good, thriving democracy. Hey, don't want to take too long. Time
Yeah.
is up for
No,
a
I'm
very
gonna.
long.
Yes, I'm
My
gonna take.
side, thank you, everyone. Savio,
Yeah,
second
Varun has to
introduction,
say something. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we will lead the bandwagon for the reform of the world, Savio.
I agree with
Yes.
you. Yep.
Varun, yes,
Yes,
closing.
I was. I didn't know it was the end of the session as well, but I just wanted to take my, take a leave as well. And Sabio, I would love to have you on a different time as well. I would love to talk
Sure.
to you on many, many, many issues, many topics, because you're one man who, like what Shruti mentioned, right? You don't mince your words. You are what you are,
Right.
and I'm really happy that such conversations are happening with Girijaji, with Vibhuti, and I look forward to many more here. But I would love to have your insights around certain other things which you again been vocal about, be it Sushant Singh Rajput case, be it many more issues. So I'll definitely reach out to you, and thanks for doing
Sure.
this. Uh,
My pleasure.
before I leave, Girija I don't know if Vijeta ji also wanted to just be there and ask Savio one question. So if you see
Yeah,
her, please take her in. But once again,
I don't
Savio,
see her.
thank you so much for doing this for our community. We need leaders like you. We need people like you to continue to like inspire a lot of us. And like Shruti said, I'm also very intrigued and very interested in knowing more about your conversations and a lot more about your day or a couple of days at the retreat or which Shri Shaktaji, and I would love to know more about that as well. So we'll
Sure.
do some more. And
Sure.
once again, thank you so much. Take care. Good
My
night.
pleasure.
I want to add
I
one
don't see
thing to this.
Vicheta.
I would want everyone to watch the Netflix documentary Explained. There's a coronavirus episode in Explained. I think it's season one,
Oh,
episode 7, which says that we have a far larger threat than what has already happened because of coronavirus, because the COVID-19 is a part of SARS and MERS, the previous coronaviruses that existed, which had a far more fatality rate. Those had a 50% fatality rate, and COVID-19 has a far higher contagion rate, but a 10 or 20% fatality rate. Now, these two can be combined. If a future virus can have a contagion rate of COVID-19, but a fatality rate of the previous viruses, SARS and MERS, and if and when that happens, half the planet would be wiped off. And we are at a future risk of that happening now that COVID-19 has already happened. So, yes,
True.
indeed, these are polarizing times, and I totally agree with Varun and Savio and all your lovely panelists here that this is a time that we need to have stronger voices, and than has ever been, and it's not a time to be diplomatic or uh, I don't know.
Be true to
That's
oneself.
not.
Be
Yes.
true to oneself, and don't be
And call
afraid
a
to fight
spade
the
a spade.
battles. Yes,
You know,
absolutely. Don't be
can I
afraid
leave
to
you all
fight the
with a
battles.
thought? I'd like to leave you all with a
Yes.
thought. Okay.
Thank you, Savio. Yes. Yeah.
If out of the 2.8 million people who have died, one of them happened to be somebody you loved and was a family member,
Absolutely.
how would you have looked at the entire situation?
We have lost 4 people in our family. Somebody
And
38
then
year old, 3-year-old child.
think about
It's
it.
too cruel.
Don't we
It's
need
too cruel.
answers? Because
We
I can
want.
understand when life is taken in an accident or through bad habits, or you've gone out to a war and you fought and you've given your life for the country. I cannot understand that we wake up one day and the
Yes.
next day we don't know whether we're going to live or we're going to die.
Every nation should fight for reparation.
Correct. Now,
Absolutely.
somebody is
We
going to be
should.
accountable for 2.8 million deaths as on today. This is today's date. Tomorrow, that number will change.
Right.
And we are doing business as though nothing happened.
That is what is troubling me, because what it tells me is that it's okay for a man like Dr. Tedros to share a platform with a spiritual man like Sri Ravi Shankar when 2.8 million people are dead, and we will go to that conference online and say, wow, this is such an intellectual conversation, but nobody will have the courage to ask him who's responsible for 2.8 million deaths. And that's death. Death is one aspect. What happens to the family of the people who have died?
Absolutely.
What is happening to the people who are suffering? Is somebody going to answer to that? We have not even asked. The only person who asked, the only person, and I don't stand by his character one bit. In my
And
opinion, he's probably the
you've raised it at a
obnoxious.
very right time. So I'm hoping that he puts forward the word exactly like you did here. I sincerely hope he reads your letter and he does exactly this.
Donald Trump
Says
was
it
the
to his
only one
face.
who opened his
Only
mouth,
person.
Shruti.
Yes.
Yep.
The only person.
Right.
And guess what? He lost the elections because he
Exactly.
decided to take on China and the World Health Organization.
Right.
Please understand that this is not a conspiracy theory. I'm asking you very simple questions.
Absolutely.
Very, very simple, very straightforward questions. They have made their own statements in the month of Jan, Feb, and March. There are so many discrepancies in the decisions that they've taken.
Yes.
It's
And
easy to sit and think that, it's
this
easy
is the
to sit and
highest
think.
level of corruption. This is like corruption, next
Absolutely.
level corruption. This, which is
All right.
Agree
exactly
I'll
with
take
what
you.
a leave.
he always speaks
Thank you.
against.
Thank you, guys. I think I'll take
Now,
a leave, and I'll
I
see you
think
guys.
we'll all leave and we'll talk
Yes,
about this
indeed.
at some other time.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
for a
you.
wonderful
Thank,
conversation.
Thank you,
thank
everyone.
you,
Thank
Savio.
you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
everybody, for
Thank
the
you,
enthusiasm.
Savio, Savio,
Thank you.
Vibhuti ji, and yes.
Thank you,
Right.
Bye
Vibhuti
Thank you.
guys.
ji.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Thank you.
much. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, yes. Yes. Pupera. Yes. Hi. Everybody's in a hurry. See you. Bye bye.